Hello, everyone, and welcome to the JR&Skipps transfer roundup. And from what we can see in the transfer news, Rodri will be signing for Barcelona in a £60 million deal. JR, what are you saying about this transfer? How do you think it's going to affect Manchester City's season as a whole?
First things first, if anyone would have asked me by the end of last season where I thought Rodri was going to end up, I would have said Real Madrid because he was
Right.
really bent on Madrid, right?
Yep.
Indicating his willingness to move. So him making a turnaround, I think it's partly because Madrid were not willing to put up the funds that were
Yep.
needed. So he had to turn his sights elsewhere. So him going to Barcelona, I think it's a huge signing for Barcelona. It's going to strengthen their squad. I don't think it's necessarily going to deplete the City team in the sense that we already know that City is a team that is strengthening well and they replace their players well. So now with the departure of Rodri and Tijani, I think the rumor that they are about to close in on Ayub Boadi and Enzo Fernandez might be gaining some more steam. More so with Ayub Boadi. I know for Enzo Fernandez, City, it was reported by David Ornstein that Chelsea set a deadline for a bid to come in, but I don't know how serious the deadline is because what happens if the bid comes in after the deadline? Are they going to reject or I don't know how that works, right? But I think to your point for City, if they do end up getting Ayub Boadi and also maybe adding like an Enzo Fernandez, I think it's adequate replacement for a player of Rodri. No disrespect to him. I think he's a decent player, but having two players like that in central midfield as well would definitely make up for whatever he was bringing to the City team. What are your sentiments?
Man, I have to disagree, bro. Bro, we're talking about the Ballon d'Or winner.
Man,
Basically,
cut that shit up, man.
bro, man, Mike took Spain to the World Cup, won the
Fair
Euro
enough,
a
fair
couple
enough,
years
fair enough,
back.
fair enough. It was
So to be honest, yeah, my major concern about Man City has always been Rodri because in the last, let me say 10 times we've played Man City, every time Rodri is on the pitch, they never lose. It's either a draw or they beat us. The only two times where we actually won City on those two games, Rodri was injured. So that
wow.
tells you the importance of Rodri in that Man City team. And if
Fair
there was
enough.
any reason why I was going to have a doubt about Arsenal retaining the Premier League title, it would have been due to Rodri in that Manchester City midfield.
Oh,
So now we're
really?
talking about Pep Guardiola leaving, Bernardo Stones leaving, and now we're adding Rodri to that. So I think it's going to be shaky at the blue side of Manchester, man. I just don't see them being able to replace Rodri. And yes, you talked about Enzo Fernandez and Ayub Boadi. I think Fernandez is going to be a good signing if they're able to get that over the line. But then with all the hype about Boadi, he's still 18 years old, man. How many
Fair
times
enough.
have we seen an 18-year-old have a strong impact in the Premier League in terms of midfield domination? He
I
just
think the last time was Cesc Fabregas for Arsenal.
exactly, man. And that was a special talent,
Fair
you know.
enough.
So I rate Boadi, but when we're talking about £100 million, I haven't heard there was talk about them willing to sell him for €80 million if they were able to get him back on a 1-year loan. But City is interested
Wow.
in taking him
Getting
straight.
him permanently. Yeah.
Bro, I'm paying an extra €20 million to facilitate the transfer. So, man, I think this is going to be like £300 million on three midfielders in one
Wow.
transfer window. And despite them being impressive names, but I just don't see anyone replacing Rodri. And I think even if they eventually do, it's going to take them a lot of time to be able to plug those gaps that Rodri as a player feels for Manchester City. So I don't think it's going to be as easy as we
Yeah, I
think.
do. I do share
Yeah,
your sentiment, but I think with the new coach, don't you think it might be more of a case of? I don't think it's more of a case of replacing Rodri, or
yeah,
it's now more of a situation of getting a manager the type of player he wants, right? Because what's to say if Rodri has stayed,
absolutely.
Enzo Maresca will have known how to use him in a way that made him unstoppable for Pep Guardiola. I mean, all due respect to Rodri, at the end of
Yeah.
the day, you're only as good as your team, your coach sets the team up to be, right? Regardless of how good you are individually. So I do agree that losing Rodri is a big one, but I think if Maresca manages to get Enzo, which is someone he worked with at Chelsea, and we
Yeah.
saw in the little time he was there that he really knew how to use the player and gets a young protege like Ayub Boadi as well, coupled with the signing of Elliot Anderson. I think City will weather the loss of Rodri pretty decently. But yeah, the
Um,
season starts soon and we'll find out, I guess.
yeah, we were going to find out sooner than later. And I think you touched up on some interesting points because you're right. Players' performances are most likely always linked to how they're used by their manager.
Mhm.
But one thing I want us to remember is Rodri played as a six. The way Enzo Fernandez was used by Maresca, it was more in an eighth position and sometimes even as a 10. Yeah, and in terms of who they actually brought in as a six, we're talking about Anderson. So if you want to compare Anderson and Rodri, man, they are worlds apart. Like these are players on completely different stratosphere. And the only other six would have been Ayub Boadi, but I guess we already touched upon it. We don't expect an 18-year-old to just come in and bust the
Walk
midfield of
the
the
league.
Premier League.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it's going to be a serious struggle for them in that middle of the park. And well, let me not get ahead of myself. Let's see what they
It's too
actually.
late. It's too late. It's too late. You're already popping shit. It's too late.
I got to talk my shit, man. So still speaking about the middle of the park, though, with Rodri heading to Barcelona and understanding that Madrid have possibly missed out on that transfer, there's been talk in the media recently about Real Madrid switching attentions to Martin Zubimendi. To be honest, man, when Zubimendi stepped in, he looked like an all-timer. Like he was going to propel us to the Premier League, and maybe eventually he did. But it's fair to say at the end of the season, he gassed out and he was looking half the player that he is. What are you saying about this potential transfer rumor, though? Do you think Zubimendi would be a good fit for Real Madrid?
Well, absolutely. I think he will probably be a good fit for Real Madrid. Also, with the kind of football that Mourinho is known to like to play, he likes to control the midfield, and I think Zubimendi is a player that brings a lot of control to the midfield. Also, him going to a league like La Liga that he's very familiar with, he doesn't need a huge period of settling in. Will probably fit nicely into the setup there, and I'm inclined to see either one of Zubimendi or MLS might be leaving. I think Arsenal might want to balance the books a bit and free up some space in the middle of the park, especially after Bruno G's arrival. So I think there should be a little bit of credence given to the rumor that Zubimendi might be departing. And like you said, towards the end of last season, it looked like he wasn't the stellar player that first stepped in and was giving out assured performances after performances. That could be chalked up to the amount of games he had to play and fatigue, which is understandable. So, and I don't think Arsenal might be in a position where they have to sell. But I think if the right bid comes in for a player like that, they will not be reluctant to let him go.
Yeah, I think you're spot on in terms of Arsenal not having to sell because, if we were able to pull off the magical Vinny Jr. deal, then obviously we would have been in a position where we would have had to offset the books. But still speaking about him potentially leaving, though, I have to say if Elliot Anderson could go for 116, then I expect at least 90 million euros for Martins.
Bro, cut that crap out, bro. That dude's
So,
gonna go for like 60 million euros at most. Bro.
if Madrid are serious, they can pay up, drop that 90 million euros. Let's spend some money on
If
Bacola.
Madrid had 90 million euros, trust me, Rodri will be headed to Real Madrid instead of Barcelona.
But that's one way to look at it, though.
Yeah.
So, that's been everything for us today on the JR&Skipps transfer roundup. And please remember to hit the subscribe button and remember to follow us on social media platforms. It's JR_Skipps on Twitter and JR_Skipps on _podcast on Instagram. Tap in.
Let's go.